Hello and welcome to part 3 of these bike community maintenance sessions with Cycle Training Wales in partnership with Blaenau Gwent Youth Service. Today we're going to be looking at taking a tyre on and off and taking the inner tube out, putting one back in. First of all, we need to take the air out of the tyre. We've got two tyres here, two wheels, so we've got to look at the two different valves you can come across. So first of all, some of you will have the big fat valve, and that's called a Schrader valve, same as a car valve. And to take the air out of one of those, you need to find something with a sharp edge. So I've got one of my tyre levers here. I'm just going to poke that in and the air comes out. You never get a tyre off when the air's in. Obviously, if you've had a puncture, something like that, the air will already be out, so that's nice and flat. Other type of valve you might have is called a Presta valve. You tend to get on road bikes or bikes with higher pressure tyres, and that's got a much thinner valve. And with that one, you need to undo the nozzle, and then you just tap the nozzle like that, and the air comes out. It's a little bit easier. Okay, so once we've got the air out of the tyre, find the valve here. I'm always going to start taking the tyre off away from the valve on the opposite side. Okay, and as I mentioned before, these are my tyre levers. They always normally come in threes. It's very important we use these. Better to use these. You hear people say, oh, I use my mum's spoon or things like that. Don't want to break your mum's spoon, so use tyre levers. And you'll see the design of most tyre levers is that they have a hook like that and a little notch on one side. So what we're going to do is take a tyre lever, and the hook is going to be going into the wall of the tyre like that. There's my hook. It's going into the wall of the tyre. I'm going to line up my tyre lever against the spoke on this side of the wheel, put that in, and use the notch to hook it onto the spoke there. Now you might be tempted, once you've got one tyre lever in, to just push it all the way around like that. Not a good idea. You're probably going to rip your inner tube, and you could rip the tyre as well. They always come in three, so try and use all three. The next one, same thing with the hook. I'm hooking into the wall of the tyre. The notch goes onto the spoke. Next one. Now at this stage, the middle one will probably be quite loose. There's no tension there, so take that one out, and we can just use this one to go around. As the tyre gets looser, the other ones probably fall out. And once the tyre gets really loose, we can get our fingers in there and just run it round the wall of the tyre. And then very gently, you reach in and gently remove that inner tube. Now when you get to the valve part of the inner tube, be especially gentle, because if you rip that out, you might rip the inner tube by the valve. We don't want that. Okay, so we've taken that out. If we're putting a new inner tube in because you've had a puncture, or maybe you've repaired the puncture, we want to make sure that whatever caused the puncture is not still in the tyre. So very carefully, we're going to feel around the tyre. We don't want to do this very quickly, because if there is a piece of glass or a thorn, we're going to cut our fingers. So very gently feel around the tyre. Okay, the puncture may have been caused by an impact when you slam into a curve or a pothole. You'll find that you'll be able to know if you've done that. If there's two little holes together in your inner tube, it looks like a snake bite. And that means you've smacked into something. Also, the tyre will have deflated very quickly while you were cycling. And obviously that means there won't be a sharp in the tyre, so we know we're not looking for that. The other thing you just might want to check, this black tape here, the rim tape, that's still all intact, because if that's not there or is broken, it means the spoke, the top of the spoke may have caused the puncture. So I want to go around and make sure that's all okay there. Okay, so I'll check my tyre, check the rim tape's okay. A quick inspection of the tyres all right, still got plenty of tread. So now I'm going to put the inner tube back into the tyre. So this time we've got to start with the hole, because the valve has to go in the hole. Now, a mistake a lot of people make, they see the hole there and try and put the valve in. But that's not the side we took the inner tube out. You've got to put it in the same side we took it out. So that's the overhanging side, where there's the overhanging part of the tyre. So we pull that back, pop the valve in, like so. Lift that over, and first of all, just rest like that. All we're doing is tucking the inner tube into the tyre, like so. If it's starting with a brand new inner tube, it's very flat. You might want to just give it a couple of pumps of air with your tyre so it's got a nice bit of shape. There's one thing we don't want is to put the inner tube in twisted. So it's all gone in nice and untwisted like that. Okay, now we're going to put the tyre back on. So with our hands, I'm going to use my two hands together, working away from one another. I'm tucking the tyre back onto the rim, like so. Up onto my lap. And when we get to this last bit here, it's going to be a bit tough to get that last bit on, but I don't want to use a tyre lever to put that on because I could nip the inner tube and I'll have another puncture. So what I'm going to do is put the tyre on the floor and push down like this on the tyre. So I'm stretching the tyre, so then I'll be able to put this last bit on just with my thumbs and roll my wrists and get that on. Okay, so as a final check, make sure the tyre's seated nicely all the way round. Then when we come to pump it up, we want to say how much pressure do we put it to. So you're looking around the tyre wall there, and you'll find what you're looking for is the number PSI, pounds per square inch. And there'll be a number or a range. It'll either say 40 to 60 or 75, something like that. So this one says 40. So I know if you've got a track pump, I'm going up to 40 PSI. If you haven't got a track pump with a gauge, just using a hand pump, you just want to pump it up until the tyre feels really solid, okay? Don't want to over pump it, but when it feels really solid, that's when we stop. So, luckily with a track pump, you've got two fittings there. The smaller fitting is for the Presta valve, the bigger fitting is for the Schrader, the fatter one. So on it goes, that lever there locks the pump onto the valve. So pumping it up, stand up for this bit. Nice and easy with one of these pumps. And I'm going to go up to 40 PSI, undo the lever, like that, and this is when you put your dust cap back on. With a Presta valve, you can only put air in if this little nozzle is loose, so make sure that's nice and loose. So I'm using the thinner hole there, and on it goes. I should check what this one is. This one's up to 65 PSI. These are a few more pumps. There we go, up to 65. And then again, just lever, gently pulling that off. You don't want to damage the nozzle, and then tighten that nozzle up again. And on with your valve cap. And that's how you take a tyre on and off and take an inner tube out and put it back in. See you in part 4.